injury that may be more prevalent in heel strike running than in forefit strike running is heel pain and heel injury. You could argue that wearing running shoes with a thickly padded heel when you heel strike when running is sufficient enough to protect the heels from injury. But the problem is, important work by Dr. Stephen Robbins, MD, who's done a lot of research on impact mechanics regarding running in shoes versus running barefoot, found that the thicker the underfoot cushioning, the harder the foot landed on the ground, with more downward force and with more push force during running. The links to his specific work on that are linked down below this video in the description box. To that point, the heel is never really fully protected from injury in heel strike running, even if you wear a shoe with a considerable amount of under heel cushioning. In general, there are some impact forces the body can withstand during running. For example, every runner, regardless of foot strike pattern, generates a ground reaction force, which is a natural force exerted by the ground when the foot contacts it. Faster runners tend to generate a greater ground reaction force, which isn't a bad thing because this force naturally increases as speed increases, but this force still falls within a safe range of tolerance. It's when a force has the word peak in front of it, so peak force. The term peak means burst of high impact that often exceeds tolerance, and it exceeds tolerance because the muscles and the tendons can no longer absorb it, of which there's nothing advantage-wise to be gained from these types of high impacts. One example of such an impact is the impact peak that is always produced when you land with this landing configuration when running. That is landing really far on the back of the heel with the knee joint completely straightened out and locked out. If you land like this when you run, there's always going to be a peak force produced at landing, and no matter how thickly padded your running shoes are. Why or how is this peak force produced when you run like this? It's produced because the ground reaction force exceeds several times the body weight when the initial contact point on the foot is small. In this case, the small initial contact point on the foot is the heel, but also a bigger contributor to this peak impact force at heel strike is the elongated distance between initial ground contact of the foot and the center of mass, which is the hips. So therefore, a long overstride angle is created. Essentially, the farther away your initial ground contact position of your foot is relative to your center of mass, the more likely the ground reaction force will exceed tolerance. So why is this peak force an injury magnet for the heel? According to a 1994 study in the Journal of Biomechanics, which is also linked down below this video in the description box, indicated that the heel pad may not be sufficiently durable enough to effectively absorb the brute peak force generated at heel strike during heel strike running, because the peak force may cause the heel pad to subsequently break down. Its natural cushioning properties may become underdense, potentially causing impact to be magnified on the heel and elsewhere on the leg. The same study found that the impact peak at heel strike reduced blood flow in the heel pad to the extent where it altered the cushioned composition of the heel pad, so it became less able to retain its shock absorbing properties during heel strike running. In this condition, there's now impact overexposure on the heel, which could increasingly make it more vulnerable to injury, and this also suggests that this is unnecessary use of the heel during running because there's a loss of function, i.e. the heel pad loses its ability to contribute to impact absorption and no longer benefits under the high impact that occurs at heel strike and heel strike running. This kind of distress on the heel pad is not observed in forefit running because you can't generate this kind of peak force at the heel, and I'll discuss why that is in just a moment. But a 2005 study in the journal Medicine and Science and Sports Exercise, which is also linked down below this video in the description box, adds further evidence of heel strike running being one of the leading causes of running-related heel injury, in that the researchers discovered that the shock absorption component in the heel pad, known as the venous plexus, deformed under the impact peak at heel strike in long distance runners who were heel strike runners. However, the researchers highlighted that the cushion properties of the venous plexus in the heel pad remained unaffected and normal during walking with the heel strike, suggesting that the heel pad can be helpful in providing impact protection more fully during heel strike walking, because the impact at touchdown when walking with the heel strike is significantly reduced, and because of this, the physical changes associated with impaired shock absorption in the heel pad did not occur, so the heel pad was able to remain as a reliable shock absorber during heel strike walking, but this wasn't the outcome during heel strike running. The researchers discovered that in heel strike running, the venous plexus of the heel pad showed reduced venous congestion, which indicated a loss of hydromechanical shock absorption in the heel pad. So in other words, the heel pad underwent structural changes or malformations as a consequence of the blunt force at heel strike during heel strike running, which made the heel pad less effective at providing shock absorption. The researchers also noted that the harder the heel strike landing during running, the further it accelerated the rate of deformation of the heel pad, which led to greater loading time on the heel pad. Even worse, the researchers discovered that the impact absorbing properties of the venous plexus in the heel pad was no longer observed at faster running speeds during heel strike running, which means the heel pad pretty much lost its full capacity to contribute to impact absorption, and therefore heel injury may be a continuing problem. Not to mention the loss of impact absorption at the heel may also cause impact to be magnified elsewhere on the lower leg. This type of physical distress on the heel is less likely in forfeit strike running because in forfeit running, the heel always tends to be in an unloaded state because it's the last part of the foot to connect with the ground. And by the time that it does, the center of mass has shifted more anterior or in front of the heel and not behind the heel at touchdown like the center of mass normally is at touchdown at heel strike in heel strike running. But in forfeit running, like I just said, the heel is the last part of the foot to connect with the ground. The center of mass isn't behind the heel, so therefore there's no collisional impact on the heel, and essentially this is a contact with the ground that is so brief, there's no burst of high impact on the heel. Thus, the risk of structural damage to the heel pad or losing its shock absorbing properties can be avoided altogether. The fact that heel strike running can be very damaging on the heel, regardless of underheel protection from a running shoe, and also in barefoot running in most cases, the natural default landing pattern of the foot is a non-heel strike landing pattern to protect the heel in the absence of underfoot cushioning. And because a non-heel strike landing just feels more comfortable when running in the absence of underfoot cushioning. This extends the strongly held notion that since running is a common human trait, humans may have evolved unique characteristics in running form that obviously help them acquire an injury-free way of running. One of those low-impact, safe running form characteristics may be a non-heel strike landing, namely a forfeit strike landing. And conversely, given that we know heel strike running is associated with more all-around opposing forces on multiple sites of the leg, adds more reason to suggest that the body may not be all that well adapted for heel strike running. To add a more serious point is that most of these African distance runners like Eliud Kipchoge, Haile Gebrselassie, and Terenish Dababa, who are one of the most decorated distance runners in history, are also all on record for having ran barefoot for around 2 to 10 kilometers a day as kids, and well into their teens. These runners have retained barefoot-like running mechanics as shod runners today and are excellent points of reference in proving barefoot running's potential in curating a style of running that sustains better long-term, both from a performance perspective and injury prevention perspective. That's not to say that forefoot runners never get injured. Of course, there are a number of risk factors that cause injuries in running. Running-related injuries stems from lots of other influences than foot strike, but when it does come down to forfeit strike versus heel strike running, there are more confirmed trends showing heel strike runners are just more susceptible to injuring more often and are more susceptible to sustaining more serious injuries that require long-term recovery time, injuries like long bone injuries, like a femur fracture or shin fracture, as compared with forefoot runners. Not to mention, elite distance runners who run with a non-heel strike landing tend to break world records by a larger multiple than elite distance runners who are heel strikers. So I just thought it would be worth noting that when it comes to reducing the risk of heel injury, you may be more likely to benefit from forfeit strike running versus heel strike running. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit the thumbs up button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't already, where you will stay more informed on heel strike running versus forfeit strike running. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Have fun out there on the roads and trails. Bye for now.